On December 16, 2004, in the quiet, rural town of Skidmore, Missouri, where the biggest news of the day was usually about the harvest, a tragedy unfolded that no one could have ever imagined. From the town of Melbourne, Kansas, a woman named Lisa Montgomery drove nearly 300 kilometers in the pocket of her coat. She carried a sharp kitchen knife and a length of white rope. She wasn't visiting friends. She wasn't stopping along the way. She came with a plan that had been carefully crafted for weeks. Her target was Bobbie Jo Stinnett, 23 years old, a kind-hearted wife, 8 months pregnant. Alone at home, Bobbie Jo was expecting a stranger who said she wanted to see her litter of puppies. No one could have guessed that within less than an hour, that peaceful home would be torn apart by blood, by a rope tightening around her neck, and by a cold, gleaming knife. By 3:30 p.m., when Becky Harper, Bobbie's mother, arrived at the house, she wasn't met with her daughter's warm smile at the door. What greeted her instead was a deadly silence. The door was unlocked. Inside, the house was completely silent. Becky called her daughter's name several times, but there was no answer. Everything looked tidy, but something felt off. She continued into the dining room and froze in place. There, on the floor, lay her daughter motionless, surrounded by a large pool of blood. Her abdomen had been gruesomely cut open, and the unborn baby was gone. It was a scene beyond what anyone could bear, let alone a mother. Her throat tightened, and with trembling hands, she managed to whisper into the phone. It looks like her stomach had exploded. The crime scene was disturbingly intact. No fernicero verteren. No screams had pierced the quiet outside. Everything pointed to one chilling fact. The killer had acted with extreme speed, coldness, and a plan executed down to the last detail. And what left everyone more stunned than anything, the baby was gone. No one knew if it was still alive, and no one had any idea where it could be. The case quickly became a national headline, not only because of its rare brutality, but because of the identity of the killer, Lisa Montgomery, a woman with empty, soulless eyes and a hauntingly dark past. She had faked a pregnancy for months, deceiving her family, friends, and even herself. And when the lies started to unravel, when there was no way left to maintain her perfect facade, she made an inhuman decision to steal a baby that hadn't even been born, by cutting it out of its mother's womb. This isn't just a story of a gruesome murder. It's a chilling warning of what can happen when a woman, broken by childhood trauma and left to spiral in mental darkness, ultimately becomes the very nightmare she once tried to escape. Bobbie Jo Stinnett was born on December 4, 1981, in Skidmore, a small farming town in northwest Missouri, where endless fields stretch to the horizon and life moves at a slow, simple pace. Bobbie grew up in an ordinary family. She was a cheerful, gentle young woman, somewhat quiet, but always positive and hardworking. She was a good student who rarely drew attention, yet teachers and classmates remember her as kind-hearted and sincere. In 2000, she graduated from high school with commendable achievements. 2 years later, Bobbie married Zeb Stinnett, her high school sweetheart. Their love wasn't flashy or dramatic, but steady and full of warmth. After the wedding, the couple settled down in Skidmore and began building a peaceful life together. The town of Skidmore was once infamous across America due to a mysterious event in 1981, the killing of Ken McElroy, a violent town bully who was shot dead in broad daylight in the middle of town, in front of dozens of witnesses. Yet, no one ever came forward. A strange shadow hung over Skidmore for years. But Bobbie and Zeb were not haunted by that past. They chose to live in the present, a present filled with love, kindness, and trust. Bobbie and Zeb shared a deep love for animals, especially the rat terrier breed. They raised and bred these dogs in the backyard of their small home with the care and devotion of people who truly saw animals as companions. To make a living, both worked at the Kawasaki engine manufacturing plant, a job that wasn't glamorous but was steady, reliable, and enough to support their lives and fuel their passions. In real life, Bobbie was also an active member of an online forum called Rat or Chatter, dedicated to dog owners. There, she shared her experiences in caring for, breeding, and training dogs, and gradually became a familiar, well-liked figure, appreciated by many. But what made Bobbie truly special wasn't just the knowledge she shared, but the kindness and sincerity with which she connected to others. On the forum, She didn't only talk about dogs, but also shared stories about her life, her family, and the little joys of her everyday world. It was also there that Bobbi shared joyful news. She was pregnant with her first child, expected to be born in January 2005. The online community, people who had never met her in person, shared in her happiness and excitement as they looked forward to welcoming her baby. In her final months of pregnancy, Bobbi lived fully in that feeling of fulfillment. She took care of her dogs, spent time preparing for the baby, and wrote gentle updates every day. But no one could have imagined that this very happiness, this openness in sharing with her online community, would become the path that led a cold-blooded killer straight to her. From somewhere deep within the shadows of the internet, a cold and calculating gaze had been following Bobbi's every move. Lisa Montgomery, a woman from Kansas, was also a member of the Ratter Chatter forum. She appeared to be a passionate dog lover, sharing photos, commenting warmly, just like everyone else. No one suspected that behind those kind words and sweet messages hid a mind on the verge of collapse, riddled with delusions and inner turmoil. Lisa had repeatedly told her family, neighbors, and even her husband that she was pregnant. But the truth was, she had been sterilized back in 1990 after having multiple children and suffering complications. Despite being unable to conceive, Lisa believed she was pregnant, a psychological disorder known as pseudocyesis, or false pregnancy. She went as far as preparing baby clothes, showing off fake ultrasound images, and planning for the birth. But as time passed and her belly remained flat, panic began to set in. She knew one day the truth would come out. She was terrified of the moment her husband and the rest of the world would discover that she was never pregnant. In her desperation, Lisa made a chilling decision to turn the lie into reality at any cost. That's when Lisa turned her attention to Bobbie Jo, a young woman joyfully sharing photos of her puppies and the excitement of becoming a mother. The innocent posts, the glowing pregnancy updates, and the quiet life Bobbi described unknowingly captured Lisa's deranged obsession. Lisa created a fake identity, Darlene Fisher, a mother supposedly looking to buy a puppy as a Christmas gift for her daughter. And when a trusted forum member, Jason Dawson, introduced Fisher to Bobbi, Lisa got exactly what she needed, a reason to enter Bobbi's life without raising suspicion. From there, Fisher and Bobbi began exchanging messages. To Bobbi, there was nothing unusual about her new acquaintance. They spoke not only about dogs but also about motherhood, sharing stories, pregnancy experiences, and dreams of building a loving family. Gradually, a sense of trust began to form. Bobbi believed she was about to meet a kindred spirit. They agreed to meet on December 16, 2004. What Bobbi didn't know was that this friendly invitation was, in fact, a death sentence quietly hanging over her head. No one, not even Zeb, her husband who went to work that day like usual at the engine plant, nor Becky, her mother who was waiting for Bobbi to stop by, could have imagined that an ordinary day would end in bloodshed and irreversible loss. From the moment Lisa drove away from Kansas with a knife and a rope hidden in her jacket, the countdown to death had begun. And as Bobbi gently opened the door to welcome a guest, she had no idea that a horrifying tragedy awaited her on the other side, a nightmare orchestrated by a delusional woman clinging to a twisted fantasy of motherhood forged in blood and lies. Around 2:15 p.m., Bobbi received a call from her mother, Becky Harper. The conversation was normal, but just 15 minutes later, at around 2:30 p.m., Bobbi said, "My guest is here," and ended the call. That was the last time Becky ever heard her daughter's voice. An hour later, growing anxious after failing to reach Bobbi again, Becky drove to her daughter's home in Skidmore, Missouri. And when she stepped into the dining room, her world collapsed. There on the floor lay Bobbie Jo, motionless in a pool of blood. Her abdomen had been violently slashed open, her internal organs exposed, and the baby inside her womb was gone. In a state of absolute panic, Becky called 911. Bobbi was rushed to St. Francis Hospital in Maryville, but efforts to save her were unsuccessful. At 4:27 p.m., Bobbie Jo Stinnett was officially pronounced dead. She was just 23 years old. The autopsy report sent chills through the investigators. The incision on her abdomen was extremely severe, but hadn't killed her immediately. Bobbi was still alive when her stomach was cut open. Marks on her neck revealed she had been strangled to death with a rope. Blood between her toes showed that Bobbi had tried to stand up and fight back in a final, desperate struggle. In her hand was a clump of long blonde hair, the only remaining piece of evidence from the killer. Realizing this was not only a murder, but also a case of infant abduction following the killing of the mother, police immediately launched an urgent investigation. They canvassed the neighborhood, searching for anyone who had seen anything unusual. One witness, who lived near Bobbi's home, reported seeing an unfamiliar, dirty, old red Toyota Corolla parked outside the Stinnett house around 2:30 p.m., the same time Bobbi ended her phone call with her mother. The vehicle had never been seen in the neighborhood before. This clue was promptly recorded. At first, suspicion naturally fell on Zeb Stinnett, the victim's husband. But those doubts were quickly dismissed when it was confirmed that Zeb had been working his shift at the Kawasaki plant until 7 p.m. and only returned home after learning of the tragedy. The heartbreak of a man losing both his wife and unborn child in a single day was beyond words. News spread like wildfire. The entire United States was stunned and outraged to learn that someone had torn a child from its living mother's body and taken it away. The search for the child began. There were no images, no known gender, no name, hair, or eye color, but the police still acted because every hour that passed increased the risk of the baby's death. In the early morning of December 17th, an Amber Alert was officially issued, even though this was an unprecedented case in the history of the alert system. When the FBI got involved, things started to change. Computer experts accessed Bobbie Jo's personal devices and quickly discovered a crucial chain of messages. An account named Fisher for Kids messaged her on December 15th, just a day before the murder. The account owner claimed Jason Dawson, a friend of Bobbi's, had referred them, and they wanted to adopt a puppy for their child for Christmas. The message seemed harmless, even very polite. Bobbi replied very friendly, gave directions, and ended with, "Have a good evening, Darlene." But the problem was, Darlene Fisher didn't exist. The FBI scoured all databases in Fairfax, but couldn't find anyone with a matching name or information. The lead began to go cold, until an FBI computer security analyst named Melissa Irwin found the only remaining digital trace, a dial-up internet connection from Melbourne, Kansas, registered under the name Kevin Montgomery, living on South Adams Street. Immediately, the FBI coordinated with local police to stake out the house. At precisely 1 p.m. on December 17th, less than 24 hours after the murder, an old red Corolla, matching the witness's description, slowly pulled into the driveway. The police surrounded the car and quickly moved in. The door opened. Standing before them was Lisa Montgomery, holding a newborn girl wrapped in a pink blanket. Kevin Montgomery, her husband, was present and recounted a story that sounded like a pre-prepared script. He said that Lisa had gone shopping in Topeka the previous day and unexpectedly went into labor. She called her husband and stepchildren, who then picked her up at the Long John Silver's restaurant parking lot after she had given birth at the Topeka Birthing and Women's Center. But when the FBI contacted the center, they confirmed there had been no births that day. Immediately, all eyes turned to Lisa. In the interrogation room, Lisa grew flustered. When asked about witnesses, she said 3 friends had assisted with the home birth, but couldn't name them. Then, she changed her statement again, saying they weren't present, but had only guided her over the phone. The more Lisa spoke, the more muddled her testimony became, tightening the investigators' suspicions. Finally, Lisa Montgomery broke down. Through tears, she confessed the whole truth. She had gone to Bobbie Jo's house, strangled her with a rope, then used a knife to cut open her abdomen and take the baby. It was all to cover up her lie to her husband that she was pregnant, a lie she knew she couldn't hide without. A real baby. The seemingly unbelievable story now had an explanation. Thanks to technology, perseverance, and a series of precise, minute-by-minute decisions, the newborn was found safe in less than 24 hours. Lisa Montgomery, the woman who had impersonated, lied, and brutally planned a murder, was arrested on the spot. The case closed, but its repercussions still echo as a terrifying warning of what humans can do just to protect a lie. The investigators determined that Lisa's husband, Kevin, was completely unaware of the horrific crime his wife had committed. Lisa had deceived Kevin for months, fabricating a perfect story that she had given birth to their biological daughter. But why? Why would a woman so desperate for a child commit such a brutal act against an innocent pregnant woman? Lisa Marie was born on February 27th in Melbourne, Kansas. Misfortune plagued her even before she was born. Her mother, a severe alcoholic, caused permanent brain damage to Lisa while she was still in the womb, leaving her with lifelong consequences. Lisa's childhood was a tear-filled series of days in a family rife with physical, emotional, and sexual abuse. To fund her addiction, her cruel mother turned her young daughter into a commodity, selling Lisa to acquaintances for sex when she was just a tiny child. Lisa's older sister Diane suffered a similar fate. Fortunately, when Diane was 8 and Lisa was 4, social services intervened, removing Diane from that hellish home and placing her with a loving foster family. Unfortunately, the same didn't happen for Lisa. She stayed behind, continuing to endure horrifying days with her mother. Although social services had visited the house, no specific action was taken to rescue Lisa, leaving her in a spiral of abuse and pain. Starting at age 11, Lisa was repeatedly raped by her stepfather, the man her mother married after Diane left home. If you think a stepfather raping his stepdaughter is already horrifying, you haven't heard it all yet. Lisa was once held captive by her stepfather in a trailer in the woods for days, forced into anal intercourse whenever he wished. Because the area was so secluded, no one could hear her screams. Did Lisa resist? Of course she did, but from desperate struggles, she gradually stopped resisting after her stepfather grabbed her hair and slammed her head onto the concrete floor, the impact so severe that she suffered a traumatic brain injury. Even more shocking and infuriating, after Lisa's mother learned about the rape, she beat Lisa and blamed her for the abuse. Authorities, including relatives, uncles, police, and teachers, all knew but did not intervene. Ultimately, to endure the torture, Lisa turned to alcohol and quickly developed an addiction, just like her mother. At 17, Lisa Marie desperately sought to escape her tormented life, but tragedy continued to cling to her. In 1986, her mother forced her to marry her paternal half-brother, Carl Bowman. This marriage brought no relief. Instead, it was a long string of abuse as her husband frequently raped and beat her. With Bowman, Lisa had 4 children, and the family lived in extreme poverty, constantly under the care of social services. Finally, this miserable marriage fell apart in 2000. After her divorce, Lisa married her second husband, Kevin Montgomery, an electrician. He was completely unaware of Lisa's tragic past and would later be blatantly deceived by her about a pregnancy. Not long after their relationship began, Montgomery told her husband she was pregnant, only to later announce she had miscarried. However, this was entirely impossible because Lisa had undergone a tubal ligation years earlier and was permanently unable to become pregnant. Deceit had begun to subtly weave its way into Lisa's life, creating a complex web unknown to anyone. In 2004, Lisa Montgomery lived in Melbourne, Kansas, and was a well-known dog breeder, frequently participating in dog shows and an active member of the Ratter Chatter online forum. Around this same time, a woman named Bobbie Jo shared her pregnancy news on the website, and simultaneously, Lisa also announced her own pregnancy. Lisa even claimed she was expecting twins, but that one baby had died, and she would deliver the surviving baby in December. As her due date approached, however, Lisa showed no weight gain, which led other dog breeders on the forum to grow suspicious about her pregnancy claims. But none of them could have imagined what Lisa would do to actually get a baby. Meanwhile, Bobbie Jo considered Lisa a close friend, with absolutely no reason to distrust her. Throughout Bobbie Jo's pregnancy, the two women regularly exchanged messages about the ups and downs of pregnancy, discussing baby names and the items they planned to buy. In April 2004, Bobbie Jo and Lisa even met at a dog show in Abilene, Kansas. Everything seemed normal, with not a single warning sign. Poor Bobbie Jo had no idea that a devil would arrive in the guise of a familiar face, bringing with her a horrifying plot. Immediately after Lisa's arrest, police searched her car and found 2 irrefutable pieces of evidence: the white rope used to strangle Bobbie Jo and a blood-stained kitchen knife, along with small scissors, proving she had used them to cut the live baby. Lisa's computer data also revealed that she had thoroughly researched C-section techniques and ordered a specialized birthing kit in the final month before the crime occurred. The sole ray of light in this case was Bobbie Jo's newborn daughter, who was finally reunited with her family. The family couldn't hide their joy, as they had almost lost all hope of seeing her alive after such a horrific delivery. Witness testimonies played an incredibly crucial role, alongside all the physical evidence and Lisa's own confession. Carl Bowman, Lisa's ex-husband, with whom Lisa was in a custody dispute over their 4 children at the time of the murder, testified. He affirmed that his ex-wife could not have been pregnant because she had undergone a tubal ligation in 1990 due to complications from a previous birth. However, Bowman also revealed that Lisa had faked 2 more pregnancies after the procedure while they were still married. He claimed that Lisa committed this crime because she was desperate to prove her previous pregnancies weren't lies, hoping to win custody of their children. Kevin Montgomery, Lisa's current husband, also testified. He stated that his wife had claimed to be pregnant 3 times since they married, and each time he believed her. Lisa told Kevin she had abortions for the first 2 pregnancies, convincing him that the terminations were necessary because something was wrong with the baby. The 3rd time was different, however, and when he picked her up in Topeka, he genuinely believed it was their child. He added that he was completely unaware Lisa had undergone a tubal ligation. Lisa's defense attorneys attempted to declare her insane to avoid the death penalty. They argued that Lisa suffered from severe mental illness due to the extreme abuse she endured for nearly her entire life. The lawyers claimed Lisa had pseudopsoriasis, a rare delusional disorder where a woman's body mimics all the signs and symptoms of pregnancy even though she is not actually pregnant. Additionally, Lisa was diagnosed with delusions, depression, borderline personality disorder, and PTSD. All these factors, according to the defense, pushed Lisa into a trance-like, uncontrolled state when she murdered Bobbie Jo. However, the jury did not accept this defense. Did Lisa truly lose awareness of her actions during the crime? Legally, no. She meticulously planned the act, faked an identity, created a JA email account, and arranged the appointment. She also knew there was a risk Bobbie Jo would die, but still left the victim to bleed to death. On October 22, 2007, after only 5 hours of deliberation, the jury found Lisa guilty of kidnapping resulting in death. For days later, they recommended the death penalty. Ultimately, on April 4, 2008, U.S. District Judge Gary Fenner formally sentenced Lisa to death. After numerous appeals, Lisa Montgomery could not avoid her fate and was executed by lethal injection shortly after midnight on January 13, 2021. Having exhausted her appeals, she became the first female federal inmate to be executed by the U.S. federal government in 67 years, and the 4th person overall after a 17-year pause in federal executions. For many, justice had finally been served. Despite her execution, Lisa Montgomery's life and mental illness remain a complex topic, raising many questions about accountability and understanding. Professional diagnoses revealed her to be a particularly tragic case. And now we will delve into each of Lisa Montgomery's psychological diagnoses. Complex post-traumatic stress disorder was one of the primary diagnoses confirmed in Lisa by Dr. Porterfield, a trauma specialist. That's right, Lisa Montgomery didn't just have PTSD, it was CPTSD, a more severe form that occurs when a child lives too long in an environment of abuse, rape, and emotional deprivation. From a young age, Lisa's mother sold her body to men for alcohol and money. She grew up with no concept of safety, was frequently beaten, held captive in the woods, and raped by her stepfather starting at age 11. CPTSD manifests through severe dissociative symptoms. Lisa often experienced disorientation, felt like she was lost within herself, lost track of time, and carried a persistent sense of emptiness. Additionally, Dr. Woods, a neuropsychiatrist, diagnosed Lisa with bipolar I disorder accompanied by severe depression with psychotic features. This, combined with the pre-existing brain damage Lisa had suffered, confirmed concurrently with PTSD, congenital brain damage, and complex partial epilepsy, painted an incredibly disordered psychological picture. Dissociative disorders were also a terrifying aspect of Lisa's condition. Dr. Porterfield described Lisa as exhibiting dissociative symptoms. She felt someone else speaking in her head, frequently experienced memory loss, and at times felt disconnected from her own body. Dr. Kemka, who treated Lisa at Carswell Prison, even stated that she experienced acute dissociative psychotic states, accompanied by hallucinations, causing her to completely lose touch with reality. Particularly severe and central to Lisa's crime was pseudocyesis, or delusional pregnancy. During the appellate trial, Dr. Ramachandran confirmed Lisa suffered from severe pseudocyesis. Although she had undergone a tubal ligation in 1990 and was permanently unable to conceive, Lisa genuinely believed she was pregnant. To reinforce this delusion, she incessantly researched childbirth online and even fully equipped herself with birthing tools. Lawyers and experts noted that the more convinced she became of her pregnancy, the stronger and more convincing Lisa's delusions became, surpassing reality itself. Pseudocyesis is considered the direct cause of her horrific crime. The act of kidnapping baby Victoria was committed while Lisa genuinely believed the baby was her own biological child, a tragedy stemming from a severely fractured mind. Even Lisa's psychological and cognitive manifestations showed she was living in a distorted, chaotic world. She sometimes heard voices in her head telling her, "Just die already." Often, Lisa didn't know what was happening or couldn't remember what she had done. She couldn't distinguish between reality and imagination. Dr. Porterfield once described Lisa's eyes as empty and lifeless, a clear sign she had lost touch with reality. The severity of Lisa's mental illness was so profound that even experts and the court acknowledged there is no question. She suffers from severe mental illness. Forensic psychologists also confirmed that during the crime, Lisa was not fully aware of her actions. She acted in a state of hallucination and mental dissociation caused by her pseudocyesis disorder. The contradictory answers during her interrogation, her disorientation, and her paranoia were not signs of a liar, but of someone truly living within a delusion. Lisa Montgomery's death closed one of the most heartbreaking and controversial cases in modern U.S. judicial history. No one denied the crime she committed, killing a pregnant woman and taking a life from her womb, an unforgivable act. But at the same time, it's undeniable that Lisa was the product of a series of severe societal failures: abandoned, abused, battered, raped, and denied timely mental health treatment, ultimately executed without anyone truly understanding the seismic turmoil in her mind. More than 40,000 professionals, from doctors and psychologists to human rights organizations, called for a stay of execution. Executing Lisa is a failure of justice, as the legal system refused to acknowledge the truth about her mental illness. They weren't calling for forgiveness, but demanded society confront a larger question. Are we punishing Lisa for the act she committed, or for the very trauma society allowed her to endure from childhood into adulthood? Lisa Montgomery was a murderer in the eyes of the law. She killed a young mother while she was still alive. She ripped the child from that woman's womb in an inhumane spectacle. No one could defend such an act. But from the perspective of psychology and human rights, she was also a victim who was never rescued from her own personal hell. The case of Bobbie Jo Stinnett and the death of Lisa Montgomery is a double tragedy. A young mother lost her life to a monstrous crime, and another woman was forgotten by the world from the age of barely 5, only to be remembered when she became a monster. But monsters aren't born. They are nurtured, created, then abandoned. And somewhere, justice remains on a painful razor's edge, between accountability and compassion, between punishment and healing. Bobbie Jo Stinnett never had the chance to become a mother. And baby Victoria Jo, the child she had loved and awaited, was ultimately born not amidst cries of happiness, but in blood and tears, in tragedy, and through a laceration across her mother's abdomen. Victoria's birth date should have been a sacred moment. Instead, it became linked to the most painful memory no family should endure. Although she miraculously survived and was safely raised by her biological father and loved ones, Victoria grew up with a harsh truth. Her mother was murdered so she could be born. To date, Victoria is believed to be living a peaceful life, away from the media, and has never publicly spoken about the incident. That is perhaps the only way to heal and leave the past behind. The public can only hope that she has been and continues to be surrounded by enough love to partially fill an unfillable void, the absence of the mother who sacrificed her life for her. Lisa Montgomery was executed. The perpetrator can no longer harm anyone. But for Bobbie Jo's loved ones, and for those who followed this case through every news report, every trial, every testimony, the pain has never truly ended. It lives on in memory, in anger, and in the unanswered question: could this tragedy have been prevented earlier? If Lisa had been rescued from years of abuse, rape, and physical and mental torment during her childhood, would Bobbie Jo's tragedy have been rewritten with a different ending? Or did those deep wounds so profoundly shape Lisa that society could no longer recognize her as human? This question isn't just for the justice system, but for society as a whole. Have we done enough to identify, intervene, and protect children growing up in the shadows? Or must a traumatized person become a killer before we re-examine the system that abandoned them? The case of Bobbie Jo Stinnett and Lisa Montgomery isn't just a crime. It's a brutal reminder that if we don't save the abandoned children today, they, or those around them, will become victims someday. What about you? Do you think that if society had intervened at the right time, a tragedy like this wouldn't have happened? Please share your thoughts on this case in the comments section. Don't forget to like this video and subscribe to the channel so you don't miss out on other fascinating true crime stories we'll bring you. Thank you, and see you in the next videos.